Well, welcome to another podcast series. We're in the Appalachian Bourbon Society's bar and not yet grill. Daniel's got to work on that. I want some food while
We got some snacks.
Today's topic is about starting a bourbon collection. I know when I started out, I think I had 5 or 6 bottles before I was an active collector, and I made a lot of mistakes going out first. I don't know about you, Daniel. I heard about this thing called Colonel E.H. Taylor. I'm like, okay, that's going to be bottle number 6.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Blanton's, E.H. Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo Trace, yeah, all the bottles you hear about when you first get started, and like most people, I overpaid for some of those first bottles as well.
I can remember asking a guy and him going to the back and like, I've got one in the back, but don't tell anybody. I'm going like, who the hell am I going to tell? I don't know anybody. I just barely started the channel at that point. I recommend for your first bottle to stay around 90 proof. 90 proof is kind of a standard that a lot of distilleries have gone with. You'll see it below 90 and above 90, but for your first bottle collecting, I would say pick a bourbon that is around 90 proof. And for me, one of my recommendations is this Jim Beam Black. It's aged 7 years, and it is exactly 90 proof. And you can see we drank a lot of it, and you can find this for around $30 pretty much everywhere.
That's a solid choice too. It's a very good choice.
Now Daniel has, that wasn't the first, this is a pretty new release. Daniel recommends what got me started in the bourbon.
Yeah, so this was kind of one of the first ones that got me into bourbon as well. It's the Buffalo Trace, and getting into bourbon, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about it. It is a good one to start with, and it's 90 proof as well. You can find that guy on the shelf if you look hard enough for around 35 to 40 bucks. Mm-hmm. Now you will see it sometime priced more than that, but shop smartly and wait till you find it.
So that's, to me, is a good idea for your first bourbon. For the second, now I'm thinking you need to break out. Well, the one thing you've now tasted a rye bourbon, now go and try a wheated bourbon. And I, there again, still recommend that 90-ish proof level. But wheated bourbons have a different flavor. You don't get the spice you get from the rye. It's
a little sweeter generally.
A little sweeter, a little milder. And for me, I'm a big wheated bourbon fan. For me, what can I say? I like wheated bourbon. So for me, there's a lot of good wheated bourbons out there, and you can see even this one's almost gone. The Green River wheated bourbon. Now, Green River's been acquired by Bardstown, didn't they?
Bardstown, yeah.
I see those everywhere now, and if you don't see it, there's a lot of alternatives to Green River, but the Green River wheated bourbon is a fabulous way to get started in the wheated bourbons.
What's the proof on that one?
Let's see, it's 90 proof.
Okay, another 90 proof. There you go.
90 proof, and you may not know this. There's a horseshoe on the bottom. You can go and get out a quarter, and it'll trap the quarter. So not only can you drink good wheated bourbon, you can play games with it.
Just need 2 bottles.
So what did you? Yeah, you just need 2 bottles, exactly.
So for my wheated, I went a little bit higher proof, but this is the Bardstown Bourbon Company. It is 106 proof. It's their Origin series, and this guy you can find it for $50 here in Georgia. But it is a very, very solid choice for a wheated bourbon.
It is. Now, it is a little higher wheated than a lot of other wheated bourbons out there, but if you like that profile, this is my favorite Bardstown at the moment, this high wheat. All right, so let's see where we was. we're talking about bottled in bonds. We actually,
Yeah.
you segue into it.
Brought it up.
Bottled in bonds is basically, and I won't go through the Act of 1897, but basically a bottled bond basically says that it must be produced by a single distillery in a single season. The spirit must be aged for a minimum of 4 years, and it must be aged in a federally bonded warehouse. Because back in 1897, they had a lot of problems with adulterated whiskeys, so they created this act to make sure that the quality was what they said it was. So if you get a bottled in bond, you know it's a 4-year bourbon. It's been held in a bonded warehouse, and there's other things. If you want to read about it, you can Google the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897. Bottled in Bond tells you you're going to get a certain age bourbon, and there's going to be certain things with it that pretty much bring up the level of quality in my estimation. So for me,
the Bottled in Bond Act was actually the first Consumer Protection Act that was passed.
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's if you go in, I won't tell you what some of the things they used to put in whiskey to
Yeah.
flavor it, but it's disgusting, and the Bottled in Bond Act pretty much cleaned that up.
Yep.
For me, if you're not talking about that Bardstown Black Label Bottled in Bond, I like this Heaven Hill. This is a 7-year aged stated bourbon from Heaven Hill Distilleries, and it's one of my favorite bottled in bonds, and you generally can find that around 50, I think.
Yes, sir.
Around this area.
Purchased one last night for $49.99. They have
There you
the
go.
gift sets out now. Come with a Glencairn.
You know, I've seen that. That actually is a good buy. If they've got a gift package that includes this, and is it a rock glass?
No, it's a Glencairn.
Oh, it's a Glen. Well,
Yeah,
even
it's
better.
a Glen.
Glencairns can cost you
$20.
$20.
Yeah.
So you see that gift pack? Yeah, I wrote the price on there when I bought it.
Yeah.
I bought mine for $56.99, but this has been around a while. So my recommendation is the Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond. What do you got, Daniel?
The Heaven Hill is a pretty good recommendation, but I went with the Old Forester 1897 Bottled in Bond. Now this one comes in at 100 proof, of course, because it's bottled in bond, right? But that's one of my favorite go-tos here lately, actually. As you can see, that one's over halfway gone. But it's a good, solid choice, I think.
All right, so we've covered bottled in bonds. What did we else? What was our next?
Next one, getting into some finished whiskey.
Finished whiskeys, and then that is. It confused the hell out of me when I got it. Like, finished? What do you mean finished? Do they put something in it? Absolutely, they do not. That would be an infused or flavored bourbon. Where we're talking about finished bourbons, where they actually take the bourbon after it's aged, and they put it in another barrel, or they take barrel staves and put it in the barrel to give it a new finish. And that finish could be toasted, it could be double oaked, it could be French oaked, it could be maple syrup barrels, it could be all kinds, it could be wine. Because there are so many finishes, and Daniel and I are really into finished bourbons and whiskeys right now, I recommend keeping it simple. And for me, my recommendation is a toasted bourbon, where they take that bourbon out of their charred barrel and they put it in a toasted barrel. Toasted barrels is a different process from charring a barrel for aging, and it gives it different flavors. And you'll see a lot of bourbons that will say toasted or finished in toasted barrels. And for me, this short barrel, a bourbon whiskey, finished in a toasted barrel, it's 94 proof, and I think it was around $60.
Yeah,
the
you
short
find
barrel?
that in our area for around $60.
Yeah. That is for me, it was a good way to get into finished bourbons. I went full tilt in another direction, and I wished I knew about toasted barrels when I first got started, because I love a good toasted barrel bourbon. But Dan, you have a different philosophy on that.
Yeah, I went a little different direction. Instead of toasted, I went with the double oak. And my recommendation in the double oak category is this Pursuit United Double Oak Bourbon. It's coming in at 108 proof. And that one's going to cost you a little more than some of the other recommendations. That one's around the $70 price mark. But now, if you are looking for something a little bit cheaper, you could go for the Woodford Reserve Double Oak as well. Still a solid choice and save you about 20 bucks. But my recommendation would be the Pursuit United.
Yeah. So the next category we have is something that probably causes a lot of confusion. It's these cask strength or barrel proof or barrel strength bourbons. You can, I would say, Google that, but for the most part, a cask strength and a barrel strength is going to be the same thing. Barrel proof typically is right around 125 proof. Cask strength and barrel strength depends on what the entry proof is from the distillery. People like Maker's Mark put their whiskey in at a lot lower entry proof than someone that puts it in at 125, which is the maximum legal you can enter, whiskey can enter a barrel at. So you're going to see a lot of, 105 to 125 and above, all calling themselves cask strength or barrel strength. And there again, it depends on that distillery. So if you like the Old Forester 1897 or the 1910, I think you're going to like this Old Forester 1920, which is available everywhere, and it's a consistent 115 proof. It'll train your palate to like those higher proofs, and if you don't like them, you're not wasting a lot of money on $100 and $200 cask strength bourbons that you're just like, it's too hot. I don't like it that hot. And heat or proof isn't for everybody.
No.
So I think you kind of like baby steps. This is a good baby step for me. This was the first cask strength bourbon that I ever tried, and I still recommend it to this day. What do you have, Daniel?
So I went with the Wild Turkey Rare Breed. This is 116.8 proof from Wild Turkey, of course. But one other thing I would say about these, if you do find one that is just too hot for your palate, don't be afraid to add a couple drops of water in it and proof it down as well until you get used to drinking those higher proofs.
So that brings us to, when you walk into a bottle shop, a lot of times, what is the first thing you see out on the, and Daniel's got one over here, they're barrels. Well, what do those barrels in the bottle shop represent? Those barrels represent a single barrel that bottle shop has very likely purchased. And they've had bottles made from that singular barrel. Not a blend of several barrels like small batches are, but that one barrel. Well, single barrels can be as numerous as the clouds in the sky. I mean, everyone has got a single barrel, and it can be any number of profiles and finishes and strengths. A single barrel can be cask strength or can be proofed down to be something that is standard through all the bottles, and kind of gets you used to what a single barrel profile was like. For me, it was this Baker's 7. Now this is a 107 proof, so you are getting up into the strength, but to me, starting out at 120 proof is a mistake if you've not been there before. So this 107, kind of like the 115 here, kind of like gets you into the single barrels at a little higher proof, which you're going to find a lot in single barrels. But if you really like it, you can find it over and over again.
Yeah.
What do you like, Daniel?
So I kind of went the same route that you did. I went with something that's going to be readily available pretty much on any shelf or in any liquor store that you walk into. I went with the Four Roses single barrel, and this is 100 proof. So good, easy sipper. But there again, something you could find on just about any shelf as well.
And did you say what the price is?
I did not on that one. That one you can find for around $50 as well.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
And it's one of the most affordable single barrels out there that's standard. In other words, they use a particular recipe with this that they use all the time. It is a single barrel. The flavor will vary a little bit from barrel to barrel, but they control that consistency when they when they're rotating their barrels and doing other things to try to keep it the same. So if you really like a Four Roses single barrel, the next time you buy it, it's that same quality, that same taste.
Same profile. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going straight to the store picks either, because learn what you like first, because most of those bottles too for the store picks are going to be a little pricier side as well. So you don't want to pick one of those up and find out you don't like it. Yeah.
So. I mean, I see a lot of store picks that, you know, are in the $75 to $100 range. It's not hard to spend that kind of money for a store pick, and then you get it home and going like, well, you know,
this not for me.
This is nothing. I like this one better or this one better. So store picks, single barrel store picks, is one of those things that you're really going to have to do your homework on, and hopefully you can get a taste from your bottle shop and know what you're buying before you buy it.
But now I will say too, you know, I'm not against store picks. I think there's some great selections out there, but start with something like what we have in front of us. Figure out what you like before you go in to start buying the store picks. And then that way, when you do go make your first store pick, you've got a better idea whether it's going to be something you actually like or not.
Where did you start in your bourbon collection, and what mistakes did you make? I'll tell you, I made a lot of them. I'm sure Daniel's made a few. And so we're here to try to nudge you along into not making the same mistakes we did. So, Daniel, thanks for tagging along with us today. Yeah. We didn't drink a single drop of whiskey. We got to change that.
So I would just say too, Mike, real quick, if I can, if you do have any questions, leave them down in the comments. We'd be glad to try to answer those for you. And then if you have suggestions for us, we'd love to hear those as well.
So we're glad you came along with us for a little guide to how to start your bourbon collection. I've been in it a while. I know Daniel's been in it a while. And don't feel bad if you make a mistake. We all do, buying the wrong bourbon. It happens more than you believe. So, as always, never drink and drive. Please drink responsibly. And we'll see you next time on the Bourbon Riders podcast. Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Mike. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Cheers.